I for Okay, now we're recording.
Well, welcome to another incredible session. Today, we have a continuation from our last conversation with Mitch Dibkoff to the portals to possibility. And our main theme today is the five keys to the kingdom of your own creativity. And once again, the kingdom of your own creativity. Um, A lot of times when we live in this world, we at this present moment, we don't think that we're very creative at all. And maybe when we take a look at our political situation and the worldly situation, even the media presents it as something that is not very creative. A lot of turmoil, darkness, chaos. But today, we have another incredible topic to explore how, in essence, you're a genius.
There you go.
Uh, and you don't know it. And Mitch's whole goal is for you to discover that genius inside yourself. So, Mitch, before we delve into the five keys, can you share what inspired this piece? Was there a moment when you realized creativity needed a new kind of map, or no map at all?
That is a great paradoxical question. I'll say both. On one level, there is no map. On one level, it's all wide open space. We get to put our imprint on it. We get to subjectively choose based on our needs, personality, and style. We look for maps because part of us is scared shitless of entering into the unknown. So we want props, we want signposts, we want, a map. Where am I? And that's understandable. Maps can be helpful, but sometimes people rely on maps like they might rely on a menu and or a recipe book and be afraid to try stuff. Like, don't just follow someone else's recipe, create your own. So knowing this, I try to honor both sides of the coin. One is there really is no map. On the other hand, it's like, okay, there's no map, but would you like a map? Would you like a temporary map? So this five keys to the kingdom of your own creativity is my gesture, my way of providing some guidance or support for people who want to tap into a higher order of creativity or a higher order of manifestation, but are maybe stuck or just need a goose or a boost. So I just take five key principles and elaborate on them, and that's what that piece is about.
So the path is made by walking on it. So how is that truth showing up in your own creative journey?
God, it's really the story of my life. The path is made by walking on it. Also represented by the Fool in the Tarot deck. That's card zero, by the way. And for those familiar with the tarot deck, the image in most of the decks is a young man, a young person who's stepping off a cliff, which is ridiculous. You're going to fall to your death. But the fool has great faith that life is conspiring to support him, with the universe is conspiring to support him. And as the story goes, at least in the archetype, the ground rises to meet his feet. So he takes a step into the void, into the unknown, and then all of a sudden, when he puts his foot down, there's ground. So in a way, the path that's made by walking on is another way of saying the same thing. People tend to overanalyze, over-engineer, over-prepare, overthink, and you never get enough data. You never have enough degrees. You never have enough proof. And so if a person is bound by, I'm not ready, They don't do anything. The other person just goes, the hell with it. I'm going to start. And when you start, things come together.
And don't you think that uncertainty leads to certainty, and certainty leads to uncertainty?
100%. Richard, you got it. It's a spiral dance. It's an endless phenomenon. And you might at one point be super clear and, in the zone. And then the next day or the next week, you're back in a state of confusion or disorientation. It comes to the territory because creativity is really, challenging the status quo, going beyond existing forms. And so even if you have an insight, a breakthrough, or create a product or a service or accomplish a goal, that's great, but doesn't mean every day is going to be like that. The next day might be a day of like, uh-oh, here I am again in the unknown. Creative people, innovators have a capacity to entertain the discomfort that comes with not knowing, whereas most people, as soon as they get uncomfortable, they just start grabbing onto what's familiar to them. And that is really death to creativity.
So the discomfort is kind of like when you have a seed in the soil in darkness, and the seed starts to grow, which causes discomfort. The seeds wonder what's going on here. I feel a growth going on, but it doesn't freak out. It just surrenders to the process, and eventually it goes through from darkness and goes into light. So
Exactly.
it's the same process, isn't it?
Same process. And actually, at least with the organizations I've worked with over the years, the example or the metaphor I used was exactly that. Gardening. Their mind, has a tendency to complicate innovation. It's like, ooh, innovation. We need a 50-step process, a 12-step process. This is going to take us years. And I just ask people, raise your hand if you've ever had a garden. A lot of hands go up. People have gardened. I said, just think about what we're doing as gardening. You need a plot of land, you need a place, okay? You need to till the soil, prepare the ground, get it ready. You need a seed, right? Or seeds. That's the idea, the intention, the goal. You need to water, take care of the seed. You need to weed, right? You need to mulch and put a fence around it. And by the way, don't expect results overnight. It takes a while for tomatoes to, become tomatoes. And then we go, oh, yeah, I get it. Okay, great. That's what we're doing. We're gardening. We're farmers of possibility.
So let's begin with the first key. Just say yes. So what does that truly look like? And yes, in your creative process.
Well, it probably looks differently to different people or different, whatever the right adverb is. But fundamentally, it's an existential moment of jumping in with both feet. You just say yes, no matter what the apparent obstacles or degree of difficulty, whatever constraints are upon you, something in you is moved to dive in. What Joseph Campbell, who was the brilliant mythologist and the articulator of the hero's journey, the first step in the hero's journey, which is a universal journey from darkness to light, or from nothing to something or to everything, is what he calls the calling, responding to the call. So the person feels something knocking on their door, come speaking to them, getting their attention. And it could be, doesn't matter what it is, it's something that's just begging to be attended to. Some people say yes, and that begins the journey. And there are savants who say saying yes is half the battle, so to speak. And some people never say yes because it scares them. Uh-oh, I don't know how to do this, or what if I fail, or I'm too old to start. And so if you don't say yes, you're screwed because the first time an obstacle appears, and it will, you'll bail out. You won't have the thrust or the courage or the resilience to keep going. That's why saying yes is so important.
Mhm. So, yeah, as you're saying, a lot of people hesitate, but I would imagine if you bring back an adult who hesitates, bring them back to the time when they were a child doesn't hesitate. A child, when it's 2 years old, and you ask it to dream about the stars, it goes, oh, well, wonderful. Hey, I get to dream about the stars.
That's the perfect example. Psychologists tell us that the human being is most creative at the age of 5, and
Mhm.
after that, it's a slow and steady decline into conformity. A man named Gordon MacKenzie, who was the creative director of Hallmark Cards, once a year, as part of his community service, would do classroom visits in a local school system. He'd start in kindergarten and work his way up to 12th grade. In kindergarten, he would ask the kids, raise your hand if you're an artist. Every hand went up, every hand. Then he goes to first grade, maybe 92% of the hands went up. Second grade, 87%. Third grade, it kept declining until 12th grade, the senior students, maybe one hand or maybe none. So that innate childlike sense of I can do this, anything's possible, I'm creative, got leached out of the kids. And he was there to see if he could activate it. And that indeed, Richard, is the main driver of why I created my online course, Portal to Possibility, to help activate that innate, childlike at times, human potential to be highly creative. We need support.
Mhm. And I notice when I read your articles, they're humorous, and humor is a way, just for myself, my perception, it brings you back into that child state. Where you laugh at yourself, you laugh at the world. No, no, even a humor can be used as a great tool, even in the face of tragedy.
Yeah.
You can laugh at it. And, and
Oh,
and I think that's what, in essence, what a lot of your work that I've seen, and when it going back to yes, humor, and by being joyful,
yeah.
it can bring out that sense inside where you can say yes.
100%. My favorite quote on this topic is from Peter Ustinov, who said, comedy is simply a funny way of being serious.
Oh yeah, I like that.
The king, when we talked about the article, The Kingdom of Your Own Creativity, well, in courts of old, the kings had a court jester.
Right,
And the
right,
court
right.
jester was able to get the ear of the king through humor. So where his courtiers and his grand viziers, who were all, serious, couldn't get the attention of the king, it was the fool, it was the jester who the king would listen to. So uh, humor is a great door opener and very related to creativity.
So that's where, remember our last session, idiota comes in. Idiot. Fool, right? Feet on the ground. The fool, he has his feet on the ground, and
Yeah,
yet his head's in heaven. So
that's right.
he can take a comedy, change the situation around, change the perspective, where the king is used to people talk to him in a serious dialogue and philosophical and political, and the fool can just say one or two words,
That's
and
right.
it changes the whole situation around.
Absolutely true.
So that leads us to our second key. Uh, get the right question. Let's go to that. Most people, I would say most of this planet, you ask them a question and immediately they're going to start brainstorming, and they're going to be experts of trying to solve that piece of the puzzle, but they may be answering the wrong question. It may be that first question. As you said, Einstein, you could tell the story about Einstein, what he does, but what he does and what the majority of mankind does is two different things.
Yeah, let's start with Einstein, which is a very powerful quote about this phenomenon. He said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes thinking about the question and the last 5 minutes solving it. So he, unlike most people where they're rushing to make lists and have a meeting and put post-it notes on the wall or whatever people do, he said, well, let's just stop for a second. Do we really have the right question? Are we looking at the right issue? Is there a question behind the question? In the corporate work I did with my company, Idea Champions, I got quite an education in this topic because clients would call, or prospective clients, and they say, "Oh, we have this problem or this issue or this opportunity," and I'd say, "Well, what's the question?" And they would kind of mumble and fumble or be very vague, like, "Oh, what's the problem?" And the person who was talking to me might say it one way, but the other seven members of the executive team would frame it completely differently. So even the same people on the same team frame the question or the issue completely differently. So how can you have any kind of alignment or creative thinking if everyone's starting from a totally different mindset or a totally different assumption about what the issue is? So the work the work in the beginning, and this applies to the online course I'm teaching, before anyone can begin, they have to get the right question. And I have some simple ways to help them do that.
Yeah, and I've seen that for myself, my own personal life. Um, when I was young in my 20s, and people said, you have a very interesting life. Why don't you write a book? Well, I wrote a book, and no one was interested. But from that one book, I asked some basic questions, and years later, like 40 plus years later, one question leads to another, to another, to another, to another. And we talked about this before, as most people would think the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole is derogatory. But for me, down the rabbit hole, and for you, down the rabbit hole means something entirely different. It's a positive connotation. It's something that humanity, we would be in a better place if we all went through the rabbit hole of life.
100%. And rabbit hole has become a pejorative term, like, oh, don't go down the rabbit hole. I see it differently, and I know you do also, Richard. Rabbit hole is another way of saying curiosity or
Correct, right.
fascination. And,
Mm-hmm.
and besides, one thing leads to another. So creativity is a very associative process. One thing connects to something else, which connects to something else. And sometimes the connections are subtle or invisible, non-logical. But if you follow the yellow brick road, which is maybe a more positive way of saying rabbit hole, you follow your interest, usually good things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that even recently with Notebook LM has it's called the Explorer. And so basically, I've started with my recent books, and I'm going back all the way to the beginning. And so it talks about just a 5 minute dissertation of what these books on, but it shows there's a thread tying them all together.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of different topics. So I everything in my eyes, everything is fair game, externally and internally. It's fair game. There's a thread tying it all together. So that is one avenue. Where how do I say, in our society, we're fragmented in everything we do, look, and see. We don't see that the unity, and therefore by not seeing the unity, the world's fragmented. It's us versus them. And I think your whole creative process is to show, okay, we can be wildflowers, we can be roses, you can even be poison ivy, but at the same time, there's a thread that is tying us all together.
Absolutely true. And the us versus them phenomenon is true for every individual. Inside of every one of us is the them. It's the internalized censor, critic, what Jung calls the shadow, the opposing point of view. So you might feel inspired to follow a certain path or interest of yours, and yet subsurface there's a voice that's saying, this is impossible. Don't do this. It's a waste of time. You don't have the money. You're too old to start. You're an imposter. No one cares, and so forth. So we've internalized the them, and for many of us, all too often, it rules the day. And so people with a brilliant idea, a lot of inspiration, and something of value to add to the world, or at least to some people in the world, give in or concede to that inner critic or the shadow side.
Okay, so now we're going to key three. So envision what success looks like. So you write that dreaming was once natural. Granted, as a kid, we didn't have any problems dreaming, but later in life, uh, we lose it. How do you envision that people can reclaim that visionary power of the imagination?
Yeah, that's a huge topic, and it's a very big element in the work that I do with people. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks, the ability to dream, wish, consider, imagine, fantasize, envision, it's a muscle that's atrophied. People have gotten cynical, um, shut down often, and it's a risk to think big because you might fail or people might criticize you. So in Portal to Possibility or any of the individual work I do with people I coach is really about how to activate or animate, ignite that natural gift we had as a child to think big and try stuff, to imagine. Getting back to Einstein, he once said, the gift of fantasy has meant more to me than my ability to absorb positive knowledge. So here's a man, a scientist, this physicist with an incredible logical left brain, rational genius, but he would what he called conduct thought experiments, which is a fancy name for daydreaming. When he got stuck in his lab or his studio, he would sit in his favorite chair, close his eyes, and daydream. Because standing in front of the blackboard and writing formulas and algorithms and mystical, cryptic notes wasn't getting him anywhere. So he would leave that world, the world of the left brain or the mind or the brain, and another portal would open for him into a more dreamlike state. And many inventions, by the way, have come to their inventors in dreams, as literature is full of examples. So, one practical way that I do this, Richard, just to take it out of the clouds, in the early part of the course, I ask people to imagine it sometime in the future, maybe a year down the road, and they have wildly succeeded with their project, what they've declared as their goal or their mission. Write the story as if you were a journalist from the future. Write the story of your success now that you have succeeded. So they're, in a way, beginning with the end in mind, which is a Stephen Covey phrase. And it's fun and it's a playful experiment to do this. So just enjoy it. Just write it as if it's happened. And acting as if, by the way, is a technique and a mindset that a lot of innovators and creative people naturally do. They don't bail out at like why they can't do it. They go well, like, well, yeah, of course I can do it. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out. And what people write is fascinating. And then sometimes they'll read it to the other people in the course, or sometimes I'll read it. And they're fascinated by the clues that are embedded in them giving shape or form to their future success, that somehow they know it internally in their cells. They know it's possible, but writing about it as if it was done gives them enough proof and shape to begin to root the vision. So that's a fun technique.
And even in the field of neuroscience, they've actually proven that by writing it down and by dreaming about it and by focusing on it day by day, you're building the neural circuits. You're rewiring your brain where automatically from that one dream thought it's being hardwired. So you're actually changing
Yeah.
not only the neural circuits, but the physical aspect of the human body, as if the human body itself is going to accept it. And it's adapting and changing for that vision that you have.
This has been also proven over and over again with Olympic gold medal winners. Those whose coaches guide them through a visioning process uh, have been noted as more successful in accomplishing the goal of winning a gold medal than those that don't visualize. So there's a lot of proof, and metrics and experiments that have been done that bear this out.
Oh yeah, even with my research, that the body doesn't know any difference between what you imagine and what you do. These guys are fine. I mean, when I hear about Michael Phelps, what he has done, he one reason he says why I run all the medals is because I totally prepare myself even before the race. I know every single kick turn I know every single stroke that I'm going to do. I know the frequency of the water. I know what the ripples are around me. I'm aware, so by being aware and being in that state, and just think the winner is only by a fraction of a second. So you need everything on your side, and especially in the Olympics, in order to pull it off. And
Yeah.
and yet, even with all that knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Majority of athletes don't do that. They don't see the point.
Exactly. Well, it's confounding to the logician, to the rational mind,
Correct.
and it works. Metaphorically, if you think of the phrase attributed to God, let there
Mhm.
be light, let there be light, and there was light. So it began with a declaration, a statement, and an assertion. Out of nothing came everything. So we're also creators, and we also have the power of the word. In the void of the unknown in front of us, the swirling gases of our life, there's a moment that's available to us. I would say a godlike moment where our version of let there be light, which is another way of saying yes.
Mhm. Right. So next thing we're going to do is reframe discipline. Now, for me, discipline, I guess, fortunately, I had a whole different aspect of discipline as a kid because for me, first comes joy, comes happiness. When you have joy and happiness, discipline is automatic. Nobody has to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Now, at the other end of the coin, uh, when you, as a kid, you do something wrong, you get disciplined. And that's not a fun state of mind
No, it's
to
not.
be in.
It's antithetical to creativity, by the way. And you bring up a really fascinating point and a fascinating phenomenon that I'm still learning about. What I've noticed when I ask people what they need more of, people who have declared, I want to write a book, I want to start a business, I want to produce an album, I want to start a school, whatever, some noble, inspired project. And I say, well, what do you need more of for that to happen? 90% say the same thing. And guess what? Discipline. And in the beginning, when they would say that, I would kind of agree, like, yeah, you need more discipline, of course. But then I realized, like, no, what they mean by discipline is really a form of punishment. If you're a
Right.
bad boy or a bad girl, you get disciplined. It's
Mhm.
correct behavior. So when a person's assessment of themselves of they're not getting to the end line or they're slow or they're getting their performance is not what it should be, they say to themselves what their parents or their teachers would tell them as a young child, you need to be more disciplined. Guess what? That's not a that's not a driver of success. That's like what a high school kid is told when they didn't do their geometry homework. You can't play, time out for you. So that's not inspiring. That's not joyful. So I try to help people change their framing of this concept and find the joy and the passion and the love for the project. As you said, Richard, discipline will follow, or the structure or the tasks required will follow. If you're outside and there's a rainbow overhead, how much discipline does it take to look up?
Right.
If you see somebody that you love and you haven't seen in a long time, how much discipline does it take to hug that person? So, what I'm saying is, let's do that for ourselves. If we love Project X, whatever we said we want to do, if we're really in love with it and we allow ourselves to fall in love with it, to be fascinated by it, the tasks required to accomplish the goal will naturally happen. You don't have to beat yourself up to do it. And the last thing I want to say about this is the word discipline comes from the same root as the word disciple. Now, a disciple is someone who has recognized that a particular teacher or path has value. And if they study with that teacher or they get on that path, good things will happen for them. So they get into it. They become a disciple of that. And yes, there's certain structures and tasks and requirements, but its motivation is internal and intrinsic, not external. So intrinsic motivation is the secret sauce, one of the secret sauces of creativity. If somebody who says they want to write a book or start a business or make more money, do whatever, if they're not in touch with their love, the L word, they're not in touch with their love. If the love has been subsumed by responsibility and stress, and you should, then they'll be in a state of self-flagellation, self-loathing, and self-punishment. And that's never going to get you there. So fall in love.
Mhm. So leads to the next step is quieting the mind. If a person doesn't quiet their mind, then as you mentioned in the previous scenario, someone who is serious and I'm going to accomplish this, with all my might. I'm going to put all my discipline into this, and you make it to be a nefarious affair, and you get serious about it, and I can move mountains, and yet. Uh, if you don't quiet your mind, you're you're not going to go too far.
Exactly. Exactly. Quieting the mind is essential. There's a lot of clutter and a lot of static in our minds, thoughts and to-do lists and tasks and concepts. And that stuff takes up a lot of psychic space. We are fundamentally antennae that has the capacity to receive messages and get downloads and tune into the good stuff. The Plato's cave, the collective unconscious is what how Jung described it. But when our mind is cluttered, we lose our ability to tune in and we are just at the mercy of the mind. So I encourage people, whatever they're comfortable doing, could be go for a walk or sit by a river or meditate or do yoga or listen to music, whatever. I mean, there's not one right way to quiet the mind. There are many, but without a quiet mind, very difficult to really access the depth of creativity that we have.
And unfortunately, in our world today, there's constant distraction on that. And I think last time we were talking about the average person, our age, we have 20 seconds. And we go down to the millennials. It went from 20, then I think went into 15, and then it goes to 5, 6 seconds for the people who were born around the year 2000. So it seems to me in such a short time, in 50 years, how it's going downhill. And a lot of it's due to the technologies that we bring, the cell phones and the social media and this and that.
That's
So
exactly right.
so uh, I feel like those tools, the media, social media can be used as a positive enforcement and also at the same time as a detriment to society.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoy social media. I find value in social media, but it's got to be used in the right way. Like a knife can be used to spread butter on a piece of toast or stab somebody. Social media used poorly can just be an addiction, a way to fragment your mind or avoid what's really important to you because there's like an easy seduction of information or conspiracy theories. In Portal to Possibility, which is, as I mentioned, the course that I'm teaching, I use social media. There's a Facebook group for people that participate, that register for the course, and I post every day on that Facebook group some simple thing as a prompt or a quote or a video just to keep people engaged, to get them out of their heads, to get them diving deeper. And people leave messages for each other. So we create community, a creative community. And I use Microsoft Forms, which is another social media tool, as a way to give people a chance to pause and reflect, or what I call self-inquiry, and untangle the knots that are in their way so that they can have more access to their mojo. So nothing wrong with social media if it's used properly.
So if someone is listening today, uh, what would you want them to come away with? What would be the primary thing that you would hope people would listen and say, aha, I I I I see what they're talking about. I want to know more about that.
I would say this, say yes to what it is that's calling you, what you may consider your secret wish, your long cherished hope and dream that you may have deferred or denied. This is the time, no matter how old you are, there's no expiration date on this. Own it, say yes to it. That's number one. Number two is understand that you're not in this alone. There's a little old fairy tale of the lone wolf, inventor, creator in some ivory tower doing his or her thing or their thing. Yeah, there's times to be in solitude, but there's also time to be in community. So open up to others with another point of view. Maybe they have a gift to offer you, what Joseph Campbell calls allies, that on a hero's quest, you'll run into people with gifts for you, something to support you. Be on the lookout for that. Be open to it, and then be willing to receive those gifts. And then I say three is understand that I'm offering a very practical way to help people bridge the gap between where they're at right now in the theory of what they're thinking of and the practice of it. That's why I created Portal of Possibility. That's one of the reasons why we're talking, because this is not just the hokey pokey. I'm not just theorizing about this or philosophizing about it. I've been able to translate these principles, these archetypal, elemental principles of what does it take for a human being to create, and turn it into a process, an engaging way for people to get the prompts, support, inspiration, clarity, and momentum to make some magic in their lives. So I'd like
Mhm.
people listening to know that if you're looking for support, I might be one of your allies on this path, not the only one, but one. And all it takes for you to learn more about this is send me an email, Mitch at
Right.
champions.com. I'll respond within 24 hours or maybe 20 minutes. And I'll send you the link that describes what this course is about, how it could be useful, what other people have said about it. And then you get to decide if this is juicy enough to do it.
So out of the five keys, which one do you feel is the most often overlooked, and why?
I would say the first one.
Mm. Hmm.
Why I have it first.
Yeah.
Without and here's the thing, Richard. We there's a great quote by Goethe, which I'll send you after. I don't have it memorized. Some of us are prone to simulating, posing as saying yes. We might say, "Oh, I've started this project," or "I'm committing this," or "I have a vision." I'm so excited. And we trot it out at cocktail parties and over cappuccinos with a friend. It becomes our handy dandy medal that we've pinned on our chest, but we haven't 100% said yes. It's our way of saying, I gave it the office.
Hmm.
So I'm wanting to encourage people to take it to a much deeper and higher level of what saying yes is. And once a person does, it sets a lot in motion. That's why Campbell's hero's journey, which is, you know, masterfully articulated, begins with respond to the calling. Say yes to what's calling you. And then you don't have to know how, you know, just take the next step.
So, and finally, where can people find your work, and how can they engage more deeply with your offerings?
Well, there's a few ways. I have probably too many websites. Uh, One is mitchdidkoff.com, which I need to update, but a lot about my work is there. People can go to, as I said, they can simply email me, Mitch at ideachampions.com. I'm also writing and posting daily on Medium. So you can find me on Medium, where a lot of this content is shared. And you can go to my business website, which is ideachampions.com. And that also has a lot of goodies to look at and so forth.
Yeah, well, one thing I was impressed by the IDEA Championships was that all the Fortune 500 companies that if I was scrolling, I don't know how many of there were. There was a lot of them out there, probably at least 50, 60, I would imagine. Maybe
Yes.
even more. There was a lot
Well,
out there.
I work with 150 organizations, corporations in the last 35 years.
Wow, wow.
Some of which were Fortune 500 companies, GE, AT&T, uh, and others.
Mhm.
And that's where I developed a lot of the tools, techniques, and processes because my audience, so my clients, were very left-brained people for the most part, very buttoned down, very logical. But they were saying, we need to do something different. We need to get out of the box. We need to innovate. We need to be first to market. We need a new product. We need a new service. But on the other hand, they were also risk averse and stuck. So my challenge was, how can I help this demographic, these people, all of whom are wonderful people, different personalities, but good people? How do you engage, invite, inspire them to get out of their heads and to get out of the box? And the interesting thing for me was because these were corporations and they were all about money, largely about money, unless my company, Idea Champions, delivered the so-called goods that helped them make money, we wouldn't be invited back. So
Mhm.
we
Right.
couldn't just throw fairy dust at them. It had to be real, had to be grounded, had to get results, and that's what we were good at. So the business grew. But after a while, when COVID came to town, about the same time where I feel like, okay, I've done the corporate organizational thing long enough, I decided to exit that world and reconfigure what I've learned and what I do for, let's call it the mass market, for entrepreneurs, for mavericks, for writers, artists, musicians, innovators, change agent, wild cards, mavericks, loose cannons, free electrons, wackos, closet geniuses. And that's what Portal of Possibility is. So it's grounded in 35 years of really walking the talk and trying stuff out and refining things and then applying it to individuals. So that's kind of where I'm at these days.
So, Mitch, so it's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And if I lived in Hawaii, we would say talk story. And uh, I'm going to go on to our next podcast in a couple of weeks. So you're getting prepared for your Portal to Possibilities course. It's only next month. Time is flying
Yeah.
away.
Starts on the 18th of September. Yep.
So to all the general audience out there, I just want to say I I got a lot out of this, and I hope you did too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I got a lot of it too, Richard. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for the great companionship, the great questioning, and your deeply evolved commitment to creativity, self-discovery, and uh, the beautiful path of life, and it radiates from you. And so I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and likewise. Yeah. This would be